treating marijuana use as a crime has not worked. I have reviewed the language of Measure 91, and it's very well written. I think it's a good bill.
Measure 91 regulates marijuana for adults, so police have time to fight serious, violent, and unsolved crime.
And here in Washington, wasteful arrests down, DUIs down, drug prevention programs are getting funds. Strict regulations are working. Here, it's really better, already. Vote yes on 91.
Radical Rant.
All right, welcome back, everyone. 46 after the hour, and earlier in the show, we made reference to a new poll that's out from KGW, which is our NBC affiliate here in Portland, and the Oregonian, which is the largest daily newspaper by circulation in the Pacific Northwest. That's right, Portland's Oregonian is the most circulated paper, more so than any of the Seattle papers. So we're going to take a look at this poll. Let me give you the top line from it, though. This is the first thing, and I got a lot of tweets from people today on this. A lot of people were worried. I think the first tweet I saw said "Rutrow," like Scooby-Doo's on this case. The survey found, this is a 403 voter survey, and this was conducted just Sunday and Monday. And it says 44% backed the legalization measure, while 46% were opposed. Another 7% were unsure, and 2% would not say. The margin of error is 5 percentage points. Okay, so people are scared. It's like, oh my God, 44% yes, 46% opposed. Now, my first concern about this poll was the previous poll that we took on marijuana legalization in November of 2012. November 6th, I believe it was. That was the OCTA 2012 measure, the Oregon Cannabis Tax Act, which was extremely pro-pot and incredibly liberal. And it got 46% of the vote. So I refuse to believe any poll that puts Measure 91 at below 46%. It initially set off my skepticism radar right off the bat. We got 46% of Oregonians who will vote for anything that has marijuana in it. So 44% yes, that seemed a little sketchy to me. So the next thing I wanted to take a look at was, who's the pollster? Some pollsters are better than others. This pollster was Elway Research, an independent polling firm in Seattle. Now, that was my second skepticism meter, because John Elway is one of the quarterbacks in NFL history I hate the most for having beaten the Packers in the Super Bowl. Now, I know he has nothing to do with Elway Research in Seattle, but the name alone is enough to make me a little bit suspicious. See, Packer mania, man. Anyway, their poll from 2012, I thought it might be interesting to look on their polls for Initiative 502. If they're a polling firm based in Seattle, they had to have polled on Initiative 502, right? Well, my good friend John Walker out there at Just Say Now on Firedog Lake blog points to an article written October 24th, 2012. This was in the Seattle Post-Intelligencer, and it was their poll on Initiative 502. And according to Elway Research, Initiative 502 is ahead 48 to 44. So they were calling 48% support for Initiative 502. And as we all know, it finished with 55% support. So they were only off, 7 points. 2 weeks away from the election. And just to see if it was, just the marijuana measure that made the difference, I decided to look at another vote from 2012. Washington had a referendum. It was referendum number 74. It was one of those gay marriage things, right? Should we allow gay marriage? And that's the basic breakdown. There's a lot more detail to that than that, but there's the basics for you, right? Elway polled on that too in 2012 and said referendum 74 leads 49-45. 49-45. And undecideds often break no in statewide elections. Okay. 49-45. What did it turn out to be? 54-46. So they're off 5 points on that one. All right. So their history of polling doesn't look too good to me, but still, maybe there's something to this poll, right? So I decided then to start taking a look at the breakdown, because a lot of times in polls, you got this situation where they're calling landlines. And if you're calling landlines only, you're getting old people. Name a person you know under the age of 50 who still has a landline. It's not a whole lot of people anymore. But that wasn't the case. This is, they're using modern polling techniques, got cell phones and landlines. That's cool. The problem, however, is in their sample of people. We're talking about 403 people they sampled and a margin of error of 5 percentage points. Most polls come in with a margin of error of 3 to 4, not 5. And it's 5 because it's such a small sample size, only 403 voters, right? But here's the real flaw, the huge chink in the armor of this poll. The Oregonian KGW survey taken by pollster Stuart Elway has a sample showing that 71% of the electorate will be aged 51 or older. Why? Let me say that again to you. 71% of the people in this poll were aged 51 and older. Now that means only 29% are aged 50 and younger, right? And those are the people who support legalization. People aged 18 to 34 supported it for 56%. 55% of people aged 35 to 50 support it. So you got a 55 to 56% support among the people under age 50, and you're only going to count 29% of those people? But when you count the people 51 and older, the people 51 and older 51 to 64 oppose it at 42% support, and seniors 65 and older 39% support. So you're going to say you're going to take 7 out of 10 of the voters that are 42 and 39%, and only 3 out of 10 of the voters that are 55 and 56%, and say that's a representative sample. Now, critics would say, but Russ, it's a midterm election. In a midterm election, you get a lot greater turnout of older voters and a lot less turnout of younger voters. And I know that. But then again, I had to say, wait a minute, really? Only 29% voters 50 and younger in a midterm? That seems low. So I took a look at the U.S. Census. And in the U.S. Census, we have got, let me see if we can find those census numbers. In the U.S. Census, I took a look at the 2010 midterm election stats, what they might be. And it turned out that in the midterm election, that 66.9% of all voters were aged 45 and older. Not 51 and older, 45 and older. So 2/3 of the voters are 45 and older. That would mean far less than 2/3 are 51 and older, right? Maybe 60% of the voters, maybe 62% of the voters, but whatever. So in a situation where in the 2010 midterm election, it was about 67% of 45 and olders, you're going to project that 71% of the voters will be even older. An even older cohort will make an even greater percentage of this midterm election. And this midterm election isn't the 2010 midterm election. The 2010 midterm election in Oregon had a ballot measure for the medical marijuana dispensaries, Measure 74, that failed with like 44%, right? This midterm election has legalization on the ballot. This has legalization on the ballot following historic wins in Colorado and nearby Washington. So do you really think that as the young people today in Oregon, age 30 and younger, are traipsing across the bridge to Vancouver to shop at the 2 best-selling pot shops in the state, you don't think they're aware that for the simple price of a stamp and marking an oval, they could have that in their city? They could have legalization? You only think 29% of the voters are going to be young people? I think you've seriously miscast how this election is going to break down. And evidence of that, according to Oregon Public Broadcasting, this was in a broadcast on October 23rd, Oregon registers record number of voters for midterm elections. Nearly 2.2 million Oregonians registered to vote this year. That's 127,000 more voters than the last midterm election in 2010. More than 50,000 new voters signed up in October alone. This tells me that the efforts by the Measure 91 campaign, and for that matter, the Measure 92 campaign, we got a big GMO fight here in Oregon with about equal spending. It's the largest campaign ever in Oregon, money-wise, as far as the advertising spent on it, between labeling or not labeling GMO foods. That is a huge get out the vote for younger people, too, in Oregon, who want GMOs labeled, and perhaps it's also a turnout for the older people who are farmers. I don't know how that's going to break down and how that's going to affect the marijuana election. But it's my belief that we will have far greater than 29% of the voters in this will be people under the age of 50 in this election. It'll be far greater than just 29%. And again, if OCTA got 46%, and then legalization has happened in the 2 years after it got 46%, and then the 2 years after that, we don't have the sky falling in Washington and Colorado, I've got to believe that Measure 91 gets better than 46% at least. Now, a lot of the internal polls show this as still doing well. I think it's going to be close. I do think this poll tells us it's going to be close, and it tells us how important it is to make sure that all of our friends have voted. There's this great app that people are passing around on Facebook called Did You Vote? And I think you can get it at didyouvote.org or didyouvote.com, something like that. And what it does is it accesses your Facebook friends, and then it also cross-references them to the Oregon Secretary of State vote database. We actually have a database that says whether or not you've turned your ballot in. Doesn't say that, who you voted for or anything, but did you turn your ballot in? So it can find all your Facebook friends who haven't turned their ballot in Oregon and gives you the opportunity to send them a personal message to remind them to vote yes on Measure 91. It's going to be close in Oregon. We're not going to get the 55-45 that Washington or Colorado got, just because it's not a presidential election year. And the typical drop-off, they say, and I got this from MPP head Rob Campia himself, the typical drop-off is 3% in a midterm election for your support for marijuana legalization. So if we go in with the same 55 that Washington and Colorado got, I'm thinking we end up at 52 this year. I think, if you're going to mark me down for my prediction, I think Measure 91 goes 52-48 and we win this thing. I think Washington, D.C. is a slam dunk. I'd be surprised if it doesn't top 60 in Washington, D.C. Alaska, don't know about Alaska. That's too close to call for me. I think it's tending on the no side at this point. I think Alaska might be like a 49%er. I'd like to see it do better. And I think Alaska can do better. And Florida, I think will do well. I mean, I think it'll get 56, 57%. But it won't be enough to be a constitutional amendment. We'll talk more about that. Plus, we got some other stories in Hour 2 to talk about. Jacob Solomon from Reason has found the one case of someone giving out marijuana to kids on Halloween. But it's not exactly what you think. Also, 5 senior citizens in America currently serving life in prison over pot. We'll tell you their names, their stories. Give you yet another reason to vote to end this madness. But that's all the time we got for Hour 1. Thanks for joining us. For everyone here at 420radio.org, I'm Radical Russ. Join us election night, 1 week from tonight. Live, we'll break it all down for you. But until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes.
I'm Paul Spagler. I spent 30 years in law enforcement, beat cop to deputy sheriff, working 10 hours a day to protect and serve. Last year in Oregon, there were 13,000 citations and arrests for marijuana. Yes on 91 will allow law enforcement to focus on serious crimes, unsolved murders, rapes, missing kids. Measure 91 also mandates that Oregon develop standardized tests for driving under the influence, which we don't have now. That'll make our streets and highways safer. Yes on 91.
Now it's time for Toker Talk Radio, the voice of the marijuana nation.
What are you people? On dope?
Where you can toke.
I inhaled frequently.
Or you can talk.
I experimented with marijuana and didn't inhale.
Or you can toke and talk.
10 federal criminal penalties.
Oh, hi! I guess I didn't see you there. My name's Ryan, and I'm just an average college voter. Caught me here reading my favorite book. You know, reading is really sexy. But you know what else is sexy? Taxing marijuana and using the revenue for education. That's why I'm voting yes on Measure 91.
The truth.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
You have offended my family.
Hey, this is great, man.
And you have offended a Shaolin temple.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
I know nothing.
I support a change in law. 10 federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
We don't need no stinking budget.
Homosexuality, immorality, general.
Down the centuries, you have slurred the meaning of the words "we, the people."
Be warned, this is not your mother's marijuana.
You could ask yourself a question. Do I feel lucky? Or do you punk?
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. I want to have them answered immediately.
Surely you can't be serious. I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical Rant.
All right, welcome back, everyone. 46 after the hour, and yesterday wasn't a great Sunday for me, considering how the Packers played, but the morning was pretty good. In the morning, on 9 a.m., our local ABC affiliate played the Great Oregon Pot Debate, featuring Inga Frickland and Richard Harris on the Yes on 91 side, and Ronald Schwartzler and Josh Marquis on the No on 91 side. And it was just, I'd seen the debate. I was at the debate. I was a part of the debate, as a matter of fact. But this is getting to see it on the Sunday morning high-def TV during the same time, Meet the Press is on and all the other, Sunday talking head shows. So this is the time when, older, more politically minded voters are tuning in. And so to get to see that debate on the full hour, 9 a.m. on a Sunday, and right smack dab in the middle of it, right around the half-hour mark when people changed channels if they had missed, and made it the second half, they got to see Dr. Ronald Schwartzler talking about how marijuana killed 5 babies in Colorado, and the TV station ran the disclaimer chyron on the bottom of it, basically calling him a liar. Oh, it was wonderful. Here's some more highlights featuring mostly Josh Marquis. Enjoy. Dr. Ronald Schwartzler repeats the No on Measure 91 campaign's lie about marijuana and prison.
Just like it makes no change in being able to take marijuana into a prison. Can't do it.
You can take pot into prison. It will, with this law, it does allow you to do that, as I read the law anyway.
ORS 162.185 defines the crime of knowingly smuggling marijuana into a prison or possessing marijuana as an inmate in prison as a Class C felony. Measure 91 maintains ORS 162.185's Class C felony and adds a Class B violation in cases of accidentally bringing your marijuana to prison if you work or visit there. Nobody would ever write marijuana regulation to allow smuggling into prison. Forget No on 91's scaremongering and learn the facts. Vote yes on Measure 91. This advertisement produced by the Russ Belville Show and is not sponsored or endorsed by the Yes on Measure 91 campaign. District Attorney Josh Marquis from the No on Measure 91 campaign worries about marijuana DUIDs.
Although traffic fatality has been falling in Colorado for about 7 years, the causation versus correlation, we're not sure. But we do know one thing in Colorado: the number of people testing positive for THC in fatal accidents is up 100%. Marijuana is very difficult to measure, and one of the things Measure 91 doesn't have, like Washington does, is a presumptive level. And THC has some very peculiar qualities that make it very difficult to determine for law enforcement if somebody's intoxicated.
Josh Marquis says it's difficult to measure THC intoxication because of its peculiar qualities. Then he complains that Measure 91 doesn't have a presumptive limit for measuring THC intoxication. Yet on March 21st, Marquis won a DUID conviction against a 19-year-old man with no active THC in his system, who Marquis himself said, quote, "In fairness, I can't say this guy was entirely under the influence of marijuana," end quote. Seems like law enforcement already has all the tools it needs to enforce marijuana DUID that is already illegal. Oregon has had tens of thousands of medical marijuana patients for over a decade now. If marijuana was going to affect road safety, we'd have seen it by now. Yet Oregon's traffic fatality rate is equal to Colorado's. Both states' traffic fatalities have been falling for years, and our rates are 23% lower than the U.S. average. Measure 91 dedicates tax revenue for the study of marijuana-intoxicated driving and increased patrols. Vote yes on Measure 91. It's a sensible approach. This advertisement produced by the Russ Belville Show and is not sponsored or endorsed by the Yes on Measure 91 campaign. District Attorney Josh Marquis from the No on Measure 91 campaign can't decide if 1980 is relevant.
So feel free to respond. You used to be able to smoke on planes too, but times have changed, and it's frankly also been 25 years since Inca's been a prosecutor and never in Oregon. This is not Illinois in 1989. This is not Louisiana in 1960.
Josh Marquis tells us that times have changed. Ms. Frickland's decades of experience in law enforcement are not relevant to Josh Marquis. That was the 1980s. This is Oregon debating marijuana legalization in 2014. Let Josh Marquis use this anecdote from 1980 to explain.
I just want to read you an essay he wrote called Fugitives and Refugees. Some of you may have read it. My first week living in Portland in 1980, I called my grandmother for her birthday. This is from a payphone on the Fred Meyer supermarket on Barber Boulevard, just downhill from my 2-bedroom apartment and stoner roommates. My grandmother and I talk until I have no quarters left and the operator cuts the line. This is mid-sentence, and I have no money to call and tell her what happened. Instead, I go home and fire up the bong. The big party bowl smokes like a bonfire of dope, and my roommates are in the kitchen cutting up a small block of hash. There's a knock on the door. It's the police. My grandmother is panicked. Portland's the big city, and she thinks I was mugged on the payphone. She calls the police and begs them to make sure I'm okay. It's impossible the cops don't smell our dope, but all they do is tell me to call home. After a scare like that, the party's over. That's basically the way law enforcement has treated marijuana in Oregon for the last 30 years.
We have a minute left. Hold on, folks.
In the past year, Oregon law enforcement raided the homes and businesses of the owners of 3 medical marijuana dispensaries in Ontario, Tigard, and Medford. These establishments were providing marijuana to legally registered patients, so police lied to get medical marijuana cards to entrap them into marijuana sales felonies. These people, who were all medical marijuana patients themselves, one a new mother, are now all convicted felons because they followed the medical marijuana law. Times have changed, Josh Marquis. It's 2014, and nobody believes your reefer madness anymore. The sky has not fallen in Washington and Colorado. Vote yes on Measure 91. This advertisement produced by the Russ Belville Show and is not sponsored or endorsed by the Yes on Measure 91 campaign. District Attorney Josh Marquis for the No on Measure 91 campaign thinks marijuana tickets are no big deal.
They say that 10,000, 12,000 people are arrested. No, they're not. They get a cite. If anybody's gotten a speeding ticket, it's uncomfortable, unpleasant. It's not a free ride in a police car, because 150 of them got cited in my county. I talked to the cops. I said, when do you cite people for marijuana? And they said, basically when they blow smoke in my face, literally. We don't destroy people's lives for possession of 27 grams or less of marijuana.
And I find it a little incredible that you would minimize this to say this doesn't really matter. It's like getting it's not like getting a traffic ticket. But you let me finish it?
God forbid we would ever disrupt anybody's life for health or the welfare of the community. That, and they're also going to say, they say arrests and citations, arrests and citations. Well, that's like saying, heroin and aspirin. I mean, an arrest and a citation are totally different things. And so when there are 10,000 citations, those are citations. Those are not arrests. They're not on your record. I could print out your record and show you it won't be there. One of the more interesting consequences, by the way, the other side constantly says criminal consequences, criminal consequences. That means is that you have a criminal record, presumably one that an employer could look at. If you're convicted of less than an ounce, twice, 3, 4 times, you don't have a criminal record. I know Portland has a ban the box thing, but even they can maybe ask a question eventually. Have you ever been arrested? The answer is no, even on your 4th less than an ounce. If it's more than an ounce, yes. So there are not criminal consequences unless you're possessing a lot. That's basically the way law enforcement has treated marijuana in Oregon for the last 30 years.
We have a minute left. Hold on, folks.
The presumptive fine for a speeding ticket in Oregon is $110 if you drive up to 10 miles per hour over the limit, and up to $435 if you drive over 30 miles over the limit. The presumptive fine for possessing less than an ounce of marijuana in Oregon is $650. So possessing a little bit of marijuana in Oregon is punished more harshly than driving 99 miles per hour on the freeway. The maximum fine for speeding in Oregon is $2,000, even if you're driving 99 miles per hour through a construction zone. The maximum fine for possessing less than an ounce of marijuana in Oregon is also $2,000. If you speed in a school zone, your fines will double. If you possess less than an ounce of marijuana within 1,000 feet of a school, which is most people who live in a city, you can be arrested, jailed for a month, and have a lifelong criminal record. When you're ticketed for speeding, you're not fined again if you have a passenger in your car. When you're cited for possession of less than an ounce, if you were sharing less than 5 grams of marijuana with a friend, you can be cited for delivery of less than 5 grams and fined another $650. If you were sharing more than 5 grams with a friend, your delivery charge can earn you an arrest, a year in jail, and a criminal record. Speeding tickets usually involve little interaction with police. Possessing less than an ounce of marijuana can lead to long interactions with police that include frisks and vehicle searches. Speeding tickets are public records that employers can search when hiring employees for driving positions. Marijuana citations are criminal violations that must be revealed by applicants for certain jobs, licenses, and security clearances, like district attorneys, for instance. Police don't just cite people for marijuana when they blow it in a cop's face, as Josh Marquis claims. Since marijuana has a strong odor, any interaction with a police officer by a person possessing less than an ounce of marijuana can lead to a $650 ticket that few people can easily afford to pay. That fear of police interaction harms our society when someone possessing marijuana won't call police to report crimes they witness for fear that they too will be punished by the police. We ticket speeding to discourage people from recklessly harming other drivers. Ticketing marijuana possession isn't discouraging anyone from smoking marijuana. But 10,000 marijuana tickets a year does cost police and processing time, and it puts undue financial burden on responsible adults who are not harming anyone. And the 10,000 who got a ticket for a small amount of marijuana got it from the 3,000 who were arrested for growing or selling a large amount of marijuana. It's time for a better approach that handles responsible adult marijuana consumption with regulation, not police. Learn the facts. Vote yes on Measure 91. This advertisement produced by the Russ Belville Show and is not sponsored or endorsed by the Yes on Measure 91 campaign. So there you have it, my latest videos in the No on 91 collection. You can find them. There's, I think, 13 of them now. at my YouTube channel, youtube.com/RadicalRuss. Look for the No on 91 campaign playlist if you want to get them all. And as I make new ones, I think I got a couple more I can make. You can get those in the playlist as well. That's all the time we got for Hour 1, but stay tuned for Hour 2, Toker Talk Radio. We're going to talk more about Good Cop, Bad Cop. Also, a little bit more about Josh Marquis' performance. Oh, it was beautiful. Loved it. You know, put on your medical expert who says babies die from marijuana, your DA who punts on legal questions, and your campaign head who wrote 8 out of 12 of the No on 91 ballot statements. That's all the time we got. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, take care of each other, Tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at RadicalRuss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it.
I'm Paul Steiglitter. I spent 30 years in law enforcement, beat cop to death.
Oh, hi. I didn't see you there. My name's Ryan, and I'm just your average young voter. You caught me in my shop here, chopping wood. You know, when I'm chopping wood, I like to be safe. You know what else is safe? Legalizing and regulating marijuana. That's why I'm voting yes on Measure 91.
Get the facts. Vote yes on 91. This advertisement produced by the Russ Belville Show and is not sponsored or endorsed by the Yes on Measure 91 campaign.
You can't handle the truth.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
You have offended my family.
Hey, this is great, man.
And you have offended a Shaolin temple.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
I know nothing.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
We don't need no stinking budget.
Homosexuality, no. Immorality in general.
Down the centuries you have slurred the meaning of the words we, the people.
Be warned, this is not your mother's marijuana.
You could ask yourself a question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. I want to have them answered immediately.
Surely you can't be serious. I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical Rant.
Welcome back, everyone. 46 after the hour. And in today's Radical Rant, we're taking a deeper look at Clatsop County District Attorney Josh Marquis, who goes by the Twitter handle CoastDA, at CoastDA, if you'd like to ask him some questions. We're going to talk about the DUI case of one Samuel Martin Kitto. And the reason I want to focus on this, of course, Josh Marquis is the leading spokesperson for the No on 91 campaign. He was in the Great Oregon Pot debate, coming off as smarmy and kind of dickish. You really got to see it to appreciate it. And he's made a point throughout his arguments that our marijuana legalization initiative, Measure 91, does not contain any sort of standard for impaired driving. Unlike the Washington legalization that went forth with a 5 nanogram per se DUID law, we have kept the existing DUI law and directed the Oregon Liquor Control Commission to start scientific study on what should be an impairment limit. Not some number picked out of thin air that satisfies politics, but some actual real science behind detecting marijuana impairment behind the wheel. Marquis has tried to point this out and use it as a negative against 91, saying they have no limit for stone driving. They have no limit for how in the hell will we ever catch the stone drivers? Now, let's ignore for the moment that in Washington state, drugged driving arrests went down from 1,600 the year before legalization to 1,300 the year after legalization. Drugged driving arrests dropped by 300, even with a 5 nanogram standard. Let's ignore that, because if we bring fact, science, reason, and logic into the debate, then Marquis loses already, and I still have another 10 minutes to kill. So this case, the Samuel Martin Kitto case, Kitto case, is one that was brought to my attention in August, end of August, by the headline in our local paper, the Oregonian, "If Oregon legalizes marijuana, how will it keep the roads safe?" And it has the head-on collision picture from the Kitto case. Now, in the story, they point out that this young man, Samuel Kitto, was driving, had fallen asleep at the wheel. His car then ran headlong into another car. There were two people in the other car who were both injured, one very seriously. And then there was Kitto and his 3 passengers who were all injured as well, broken bones and such. The prosecutors, and that would be Josh Marquis, the district attorney, and is it Ron Brown, I think the guy's name, the deputy district attorney, were convinced that Kitto caused the crash while high on marijuana. And so they charged him with assault and driving under the influence. Now, Kitto's drug tests came back from the Portland hospital. They took 2 samples of blood, set them to a private lab. One of the tests showed scant levels of meth and ecstasy, which Kitto admitted himself that he'd used 3 days earlier. The tests also came back positive for 9-carboxy-THC. That's the metabolite, the inactive byproduct of marijuana. But according to Robert Hara, the forensic toxicologist who analyzed Kitto's blood, and in testimony said, quote, "The THC parent drug, which is active, was not there. No active THC in blood. Would not have even been a DUI under Washington's 5 nanogram DUI limit. Had 0 nanograms in his blood." Now, the tests do say that it was likely he had smoked marijuana within the last few hours. But by themselves, they could not prove he was high at the time of the crash. Now, did that cause District Attorney Josh Marquis to realize that, my goodness, kid had no pot in his system? A charge of driving under the influence of marijuana wouldn't be appropriate in this case. Ha! No, of course not. Marquis went on to prosecute this trial, couldn't get the serious assault charges to stick, but did get the marijuana DUI to stick. And because of that marijuana DUI charge, Samuel Kitto, age 19, is now a felon for life. For the rest of his life, will have trouble getting jobs, will have trouble getting loans, licenses, security clearances, and is currently serving 4 years in the Eastern Oregon Correctional Facility in Pendleton, Oregon. Now, I am not here to excuse a wreck. This was a serious wreck. Some people were seriously hurt. But try the kid for what happened. They were at a party the night before. They stayed up late. They got up the next morning. The kid was too tired to drive. He wasn't impaired by marijuana. Now, you want to try him for impairment from being sleepy, from being fatigued, which, by the way, is the #1 cause of impaired driving wrecks. By all means, do it. And if you can get a conviction of driving too sleepy and the kid's a felon for life, fine. But he used the scare of marijuana to get a felony conviction for this kid for 4 years. And if that wasn't bad enough, folks, here is the final line in the Oregonian story. Quoting District Attorney Josh Marquis. Quote, "In fairness, I can't say this guy was entirely under the influence of marijuana. I think the jury wasn't all that sure either." End quote. The district attorney admits that he cannot prove that in his mind, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the guy was under the influence of marijuana. and still puts him in prison for 9 years and ruins his life. Okay, Russ, this just might be, a case where you, as a marijuana guy, are taking personal offense to this. The kid did get high. He did admit going to a party, a rave the night before. He did drive his car too sleepy. He was fatigued. He fell asleep. He went across the center line. He hurt somebody. So I decided maybe we ought to look at some of the other cases that Josh Marquis has prosecuted. Now, I can't say for sure he was the lead prosecutor in this next case. Maybe it was the deputy DA, but it was Clatsop County. It was Astoria, Oregon. See if I can find this story for you. Find the right story. Where are you? Oh, I got to find the other guy's name. Sorry, I thought I had this one pulled up. There we go. That's the link. Let me just read you this little story. Astoria man sentenced for DUI crash that injured his wife. This was this month, folks. This month in Astoria, Oregon, Clatsop County, Circuit Court. An Astoria man who injured his wife in a crash while driving under the influence of marijuana and alcohol in mid-April was sentenced Friday in Clatsop County District Court or Circuit Court. John Nemi, age 67, from Astoria, was sentenced to 2 years probation, 2 days in jail, 30 days house arrest, and 1 year's driver's license suspension. The sentence stems from him pleading guilty to fourth degree assault, driving under the influence of intoxicants, and second-degree criminal mischief. He was on his way home from a dinner and auction with his wife when he drove and struck a retaining wall in his Mercedes-Benz. The cops had to use the jaws of life to free the wife from the car. And basically, the toxicology test, you remember the Sam Kiddo kid who got the DUI marijuana 4-year felony prison time with 0 THC active in his system? This 67-year-old guy who drives the Mercedes, his blood alcohol content was 0.15. Twice, more than twice, almost twice the legal limit. Almost twice the legal limit. Now, it's kind of apples and oranges because in one case, you have a 67-year-old guy driving a Mercedes from a upper crust dinner and auction in Astoria who only ran into a wall and only hurt his wife. And in the other case, you've got the kid who was driving, what is this, a Subaru? Who ran headlong into another car and hurt 6 people, one of whom in the other car, by the way, just so happens to be a millionaire member of New York Governor Andrew Cuomo's cabinet. And then I thought maybe we should look up another case. And I haven't yet found this case yet, but I have heard tell of this case. And once I find it, I'll bring it to you here on 420 Radio. But I've heard allegations that there's another case from the same rave where Samuel Kitto had partied the night before, where one of the other ravers got into his car, drove it off of a dirt road, ran over some of the people who were in their tents at the rave, injuring them, who was high at the time. This guy was taken and given a trial, not in the main court where the news cameras were like Samuel Kitto, but in the basement with not much made about it. Where Samuel Kitto was initially arrested and held on a $500,000 bond, this other guy was arrested and then released on his own recognizance. This is what's been alleged. This is what I've heard. Again, I'm working to verify the details of that story. But what I have found so far is a little bit of selective prosecution on the case of an overzealous prosecutor here who hates marijuana and wanted to send a message, wanted to make an example of Samuel Kitto, wanted to polish his bona fides on being the anti-rave guy who's going, I'm going to shut down those kids who are partying in the forest, by God, with their marijuanas and their ecstasies. And of course, if If a high-profile member of the governor's cabinet from New York is injured and has to have major surgery to repair her intestines, well, my God, that's just all the more reason to ruin a 19-year-old kid's life. It's a sad story, and I'm not saying Samuel Kiddo shouldn't have gotten any punishment. But the justice system needs to work with the facts and not with the reefer madness. If D.A. Marquis had prosecuted this guy for the assault charges, for the fatigue, for falling asleep at the wheel, then we wouldn't even be talking about this. But knowing in his mind, he admits to the Oregonian that beyond a reasonable shadow of doubt, he did not think the guy was impaired by marijuana, and then goes forward and prosecutes him successfully for being impaired on marijuana. That kind of bigotry ruins lives, Mr. Marquis. I ain't going away, pal. Something about calling me a mean, crazy loon has somehow motivated me. But that's all the time I got for Hour 1. Stay tuned for Hour 2, Toker Talk Radio. We'll take your calls at 971-533-7111. For everyone here at 420 Radio, thanks for joining us. I'm Radical Russ. Until next time, take care of each other, Tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it.
Did I go to the high school with that guy? Who is that guy? Oh no, he's like an actor. Right. What has he been in? In the time it takes you to figure out who I am, you could fill out a ballot and mail it. Just do it. It'll take you 10 seconds. And then you can find out, oh, that's right, that's Tate Donovan. He was in that thing. Right, he's an actor. Right?
Measure 91 camera.
You can't handle the truth.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
You have offended my family.
Hey, this is great, man.
And you have offended a Shaolin temple.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
I know nothing.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
We don't need no stinking budget.
Homosexuality, immorality in general.
Down the century, you have slurred the meaning of the words we, the people.
Be warned, this is not your mother's marijuana.
You could ask yourself a question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. I want to have them answered immediately.
Surely you can't be serious. I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical Rant.
Welcome back, 48 after the hour, and we continue our coverage of the Great Oregon Pot Debate, and we will play the entire hour debate in its entirety, which is redundant, I understand. We will play the debate in its entirety at 4 o'clock. 7 o'clock also replay time, so 4 and 7 Pacific or 7 and 10 Eastern if you want to catch it. It's also online on YouTube. I think I passed the link through my Radical Russ Twitter account. And will be rebroadcast here in Portland on Sunday morning, and we'll make sure to tweet that out as well. So follow at Radical Russ if you want that kind of information. Now, earlier we played the video where Dr. Ronald Schwartzler claimed that 5 infants had died in Colorado from ingesting gummy bears, which he has now retracted officially on the Oregonian. But, and he was called out. He was called out by the audience who openly shouted lies and wanted the source. Well, Josh Marquis also blatantly lied about Measure 91 last night. Unfortunately, it's one of those more technical things where it's not the kind of thing where people are going to shout lies and ask for sources. That's my job. So here I've got a video for you of Josh Marquis claiming that Measure 91 is a free-for-all that has no limits whatsoever and will have pot shops on every corner and the sky will fall and terrible things will happen. So here we go, Josh Marquis from last night's debate at Portland State. District Attorney Josh Marquis for the No on Measure 91 campaign has not read Measure 91.
There's nothing in there about how the things are going to be packaged like you've seen.
Section 7, paragraphs 1 and 2A grant OLCC all the regulatory authority over sales and production.
There's nothing that says how it can be marketed. There's nothing that says how many hundreds of stores there can be in Portland.
Section 7, paragraphs 2F and G grant OLCC authority to regulate and even ban marijuana advertising. Section 29, paragraph 2A grants OLCC authority to limit the number of pot shops in a city or county.
And in fact, it's a two-pronged thing. One has the OLCC, which has done such a great job of keeping alcohol out of the hands of teenagers.
Teen drinking dropped from 1/2 to 1/3 in the last 7 years.
We'll regulate marijuana for commercial sale, but then completely unregulated and untaxed, people will be able to have 8 ounces of marijuana, which is about 400 joints.
Section 6, paragraph 1 only allows 8 ounces of marijuana in the home if one is growing 4 plants.
We actually rolled it to find out. A pound of edibles, an ounce of hash oil, 72 ounces of cannabis liquid, which I never even heard of, and each household can grow 4 plants.
Oregon has the same public possession, edibles, and liquid limits as Washington, and lower home grow, home possession, and hash oil limits than Colorado. Measure 91 has taken the best from Colorado and Washington laws and improved them. Learn the facts. Vote yes on Measure 91. This advertisement produced by the Russ Belville Show and is not sponsored or endorsed by the Yes on Measure 91 campaign. And that video, of course, is available on my Radical Russ YouTube channel, so youtube.com/RadicalRuss if you'd like to pass that one around. I think it's important because they keep hammering away at this, oh my God, it allows 8 ounces, and they need to be corrected that it only allows 8 ounces in the home, and that's with you growing 4 plants, so that if you harvest 2 ounces per plant, you're not automatically a criminal come harvest time. Plus, it allows us to give marijuana away to each other, too. So if you overharvest, you can then give some to someone else and still be under your limits. So this fear-mongering and outright lying about Measure 91 not containing any limits, if anything, it's a technical lie, because it doesn't actually specify a hard limit on the number of stores, but gives the OLCC all the power it needs to set up any hard limit it wants to set up. So it's very disingenuous of Josh Marquis to keep hammering away at this idea that Measure 91 is some sort of free-for-all without any sort of limits. Now, the other thing that was very exciting, I followed Kevin Sabet around this state to 7 different appearances. And at each of the appearances, people were allowed in the audience. They didn't let people ask questions directly over the mic or anything, because, they didn't want it to get out of hand. Kevin Sabet's learned his lesson. If you let people talk about marijuana, they will, and they'll usually make you look bad. So they allowed people to hand in cards, little 3x5 index cards, and you could write your question on that. And at each event, I wrote my question down, hoping it would get answered. And it didn't get answered at the first few events. So every time I rewrote the question, I tried to hone it in just a little bit better, try to make a little bit more accurate, and hoped that it would eventually get asked. So it never did quite get asked, although I did ask it of Kevin Sabet personally when we were having a little chat in LeGrand, but it never got asked at the forums. So at this event, the K2 live audience was allowed to ask on the microphone a question of the people in the debate, and I availed myself of that opportunity to ask him my question, which again I had whittled down from 7 different writing attempts of it through the Kevin Sabet tour. And as I was told by Jeff Mapes of the Oregonian, who's the senior political reporter for the state's largest newspaper, he said it was the question of the night. And as far as applause breaks go, it got the most applause of the night. The second most applause was when Josh Marquis admitted that Oregonians grow better marijuana than Mexicans. And I was really, really proud of this moment and just so excited that it made the TV broadcast. The video is available at my Radical Russ YouTube channel, again, like the others, if you'd like to check it out. And again, stay tuned for the end of this show at 4 o'clock, top of the hour. We're going to replay the entire debate uninterrupted in its original form. So you can't accuse me of taking things out of context or editing it funny or anything like that. You'll get to see the entire debate coming up next, 4 o'clock Pacific, and 7 o'clock Pacific. We'll replay it again as well. And for those of you here in Oregon, in the Portland area, it will be on our K2 channel, which is channel 2 over the air. It's like 702 on the satellite dish and the cable, I think, something like that. But you can find it. It's the ABC affiliate, Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Pacific time. It will be rebroadcast. But now I present to you my question at the debate, the question the No on 91 campaign cannot answer. And now, the one question the No on Measure 91 campaign cannot answer.
Well, getting our questions from the audience. We have another one. Go ahead, sir.
Mr. District Attorney, I'm a 46-year-old Oregonian. I've been smoking marijuana since 1990 because I found it worked better for me than the alcohol that was killing me. I'm self-employed in my own home, so I don't affect the workplace. I have no children, so I don't affect the children. And I don't even own a car. I take public transportation everywhere I go, so I'm not affecting the roads. If Measure 91 is to fail, do you recommend that I continue buying from criminals? Do you recommend that I grow and become a criminal? Do you recommend that I go to Vancouver, buy, and bring it back and become a criminal? Or do you recommend that I cheat the medical marijuana program?
I promise you they're not cutting into your time, Josh. Go ahead if you'd like to respond.
I'm going to let a doctor answer Mr. Belville's question.
All right, go ahead, doctor.
Cheating the medical marijuana business. You know, medical marijuana is still there. All physicians that I know are in favor of it. Now, if you've got a medical problem, maybe, I don't know what your problem might be. Is it so why do you need a drug? Because I enjoy it more than alcohol, sir. Okay, you've got a right to do that. But my father was an alcoholic, and I figured I didn't want to go down that road. Yeah, but it's still an addicting drug. Maybe you're one of these persons who won't get addicted, but 10% of the population will. But you're part of that won't get addicted. And I can't speak for you or for those people, but what I do speak for is those that can get damaged genetically and environmentally. So the 91% of us who don't have a problem should continue to support a criminal market. I didn't say that. Well, that's the only option you're leaving me, sir. Smoking, smoking is the quickest way to get a drug in your brain, isn't it? 15 seconds it takes. Why do you use a drug? You use it to feel better or to not feel bad. Why do we need to do that? Why can't we? Anxiety and stress are normal things in life. We need to problem solve instead of using a drug to numb our feelings. Do you recommend alcohol prohibition? No. No, this isn't about alcohol prohibition.
We're going to move on to it. Thank you for your question. I do appreciate it very much.
No matter what you think about marijuana, it's here. 314,000 Oregonians aged 21 and older use marijuana every month, and 108,000 use nearly every day. Keeping marijuana illegal does nothing to deter use, but it does enrich cartels, criminals, and kids who deal. That multi-million-dollar business pays no Oregon taxes. The two best-selling pot shops in Washington state aren't in Seattle, they're across the river in Vancouver. Why let our Oregon money pay Washington taxes? Marijuana is never going away. Let's take the crime out of the equation. Vote yes on Measure 91. It's about time. This advertisement produced by the Russ Belville Show and is not sponsored or endorsed by the Yes on Measure 91 campaign. So there you go. That is the question that the No on 91 campaign did not answer. I did not get an answer from that doctor. He told me that, drugs are bad, okay, and stress is normal, and you should just learn how to cope with it, okay. But I do have a right to drink, apparently. He said I do have a right to that. So if I can't cope with stress, it's okay if I take the worst drug that's legal. The bankruptcy of prohibition is becoming more and more readily apparent to everyone out there. The Berlin Wall of Prohibition is crumbling, and Dr. Ronald Schwartzler and Josh Marquis stand with Governor George Wallace and all the bigots, the homophobes, the segregationists, the anti-miscegenationists, I can never say that word, with every person who's ever stood against the march of history and the arc of justice to be on the wrong side of history and to continue to oppress people who don't deserve it.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at RadicalRuss.com.
That's all the time we got for today, but stay tuned. The full 1 hour debate is next. I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes.
It's time to vote yes on Measure 91. Oregon judges, prosecutors, and law enforcement agree Measure 91 is the better approach to marijuana.
Vote yes on 91.
Oregon teachers, moms, and drug treatment professionals say